On the first part of this program, I want to speak about the traditions which the Italian American here in America draws upon their festivities and in the manner and their customs in which this season is celebrated here in America. And to begin, we must go back to the earliest years of the infant Christian church, remembering that the early fathers were, for the most part, products of the civilization that was Rome. Pre-Christian Rome had its religion and its pagan gods borrowed largely from the Greeks, upon which the Romans superimposed their own deities. And so too these wise early fathers of the infant Christian church in Italy carefully built every Christian church on the site of a pagan temple, and just as carefully they superimposed the Christian holidays over those of pagan Rome. In this way, the Holy Family replaced the Roman household gods. In the year 354, Bishop Liberius of Rome ordered that the Feast of the Nativity be celebrated on December 25th, which was a pagan holiday known as the Saturnalia, which the Romans celebrated the victory of light over darkness. This idea easily turned from a pagan to a Christian one, since Christians consider Christ as the light of life. This was just one of the many ways in which the church very wisely kept unbroken the rhythms of Roman life and customs, converting their very customs as well as their souls to the new and truer religion. Now, the name Christmas comes from an early English term, Christ's Mass, and is used only in English-speaking countries. For Italians, it is Natale, the Feast of the Nativity, the establishment of the Holy Family. And if we probe a little deeper into its real meaning, we would find that it is also the celebration of the Christian marriage, the establishment of a new family, which is what marriage is all about. To form a new family, which in turn will reinforce the existing ones, and therein lies the real strength of a people and its culture. As G.K. Chesterton, that great Englishman, puts it, the East may be the home of religions, but in the West it is the religion of the home. As in other Christian lands, Christmas in Italy is a time for family reunions. An Italian saying is Natale con I tuoi, Pasqua con chi vuoi. Christmas with yours and Easter with whom you wish. Italians save all year in order to rejoin their families at Christmas. Special trains in Europe are scheduled to bring temporary expatriate workers back from Germany, France, and Belgium. Now, the traditional Christmas season symbol in Italy is the presepio, or the Christmas crib. And it is much more prevalent than the Christmas tree. The presepio can be any size, simple or elaborate. The Bethlehem nativity scene is portrayed by a manger and sometimes even an entire village with colorful small figures of the principals. And here we see a sample of this. Thanks to my sister Marie, who made this set. Here we see the presepio as St. Francis first conceived it back in the early part of the 13th century. We see the animals standing around in astonishment and wonder, and the same with the shepherds of the fields who came because of the light. And here we see the infant Gesù Bambino with his mother, the Blessed Mother, affectionately called by the Sicilians La Bella Madre, Saint Joseph, the patron saint of all Italian fathers and godfathers too, and the animals all around, standing around in awe and wonderment. This is a thriving business in Italy, and it is one of the principal businesses in Naples, the making of these handmade statuettes, who seem to be, and these sellers seem to be everywhere and at all times around Christmas season, trying to sell their wares to the people. The Christmas season in Italy is 32 days long, starting on St. Nicholas's Day of December the 6th, and ending on the Feast of the Epiphany, when every well-tended crib has the three figures of the wise kings, as you see here, introduced and added only on the feast day of the Epiphany, which is the last day of the Christmas season. And then the children know that the Christmas time is over and the next day the crib is dismantled and put away for another season. Now, Santa Claus and the Christmas tree are rather recent innovations in Italy, introduced by the presence of American and British troops in Italy during World War II, who arranged Christmas parties for Christmas children. And the traditional Italian time for exchanging gifts really was the feast day of the Epiphany, the first manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles. And gifts were bought. The children were taught that the gifts would be brought to them by the Befana, a benevolent witch who traveled on a broomstick. And they were also warned that unruly children or children who misbehaved all year would, instead of getting gifts, would get a lump of coal. And I can't tell you how many pieces of coal I had to rummage through in my stocking to get down to a little gift at the bottom of the stocking. But nowadays, Italian children anticipate gifts on Christmas and on the Epiphany, so they have it both ways. And they're taught that the donor is Gesù Bambino, baby Jesus. And Santa Claus is known as Babbo Natale, or Father Christmas. Unlike Santa's sleigh and the Befana's broomstick, the baby Jesus makes his rounds on a donkey, distributing Christmas toys to the sleeping children who have earlier provided a handful of hay at the base of the chimney for the donkey. Now, in Italy, the church is a social center as well as a place of worship. And just as the ancient Romans placed their temples in the public forums, so too the town or village church is the dominant edifice of the people's piazza, or square. And before it is anything else, it is indeed a religious holiday. For today, God has become incarnate, et incarnatus est. He has assumed our humanity and shares our joys and pains, and we go to midnight mass to thank him for assuming that humanity, which is a part of his mercy and charity. Now, critics have complained that the great Renaissance painters of those marvelous church frescoes depict our Savior as too human. But this is the very key to their idea of God, that he is indeed with us, that you might run into him as you turn the corner. After all, he did choose to come down to us. As St. Francis's famous prayer, who was that most Christian of all Christians, and who was the originator of this crib scene, prayed that he be debased, that others may be raised up. And so too, God comes to us, meets us halfway, assumes our humanity in order that we may approach him and partake a part of his divinity. You see this in these the absence of the high vaulted Gothic arches in Italian churches. Because to the Italian, these high vaulted arches suggest remoteness and distance of God, when we know that in fact he is here with us at our very elbows. You will hear this in the Italian Christmas songs, which are very cantabile, very singable, with a simple, direct quality and with an easy, immediate appeal, perfectly understood and easily felt, with none of the four-square logarithmic convolutions preferred by others. But we won't quarrel with anyone else's preferences. We won't even criticize it. Now, Mrs. Gillespie and the Dunmore Choral Club will present the next group of Christmas carols.
Caroling is popular in Italy. Shepherds go from house to house in the Italian countryside, singing to the accompaniment of the bagpipes. A main feature of the Italian Christmas is the creche, or the presepio. Many carols have been written about the Christ child's birth, and the familiar one based on the Adeste Fidelis by Pietro Ion is a great favorite at Christmas time. Pietro Ion was born in Italy in 1884, and in the early 1900s became organist at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. He composed the Gesù Bambino.
Now I would like to speak about our heritage, and specifically about the Italian Christmas here in America. Now, Christmas was introduced to America by an Italian, its discoverer, Christopher Columbus. Every schoolboy knows that. And you will recall that in the first part of this program, I mentioned the sellers of handmade statuettes and dolls who seem to be everywhere and at all times, persistently pressing their merchandise on everyone they meet. Well, Italian folklore has it that when Columbus first set foot on the New World, the first man he encountered was a Neapolitan seller of plastic figures, pestering him to make a sale. Now, Columbus was from Genoa, and the Genovese, together with the Sicilians, are known for their thriftiness. They're the Scotsmen of Italy. But not in a mood to buy, Columbus dismissed them with these words, "E vatte col lupupo," beat it with the doll. Well, it's only a story. Se non è vero, è ben trovato. If it's not true, it's well that somebody thought about it. But to get serious again, how many people know that it was an expatriate Italian who assisted the author in the composition of that most famous of all American Christmas poems, The Night Before Christmas? Lorenzo da Ponte, a Venetian poet who wrote the librettos for Mozart's three most famous operas, Don Giovanni, The Marriage of Figaro, Così fan tutte, migrated to America in 1805 and lived right near here in Sunbury and in Pottsville and in Philadelphia, and found his way to New York City in 1807, where he met and was befriended by Clement Moore, the future author of that famous Christmas poem. Clement Clark Moore was the son of a bishop, Benjamin Moore, who was the founder of the General Theological Seminary and a trustee at Columbia University. The Moores were lovers and students of Italian literature and read Dante, Tasso, and Alfieri in the original Italian. Da Ponte and Moore met purely by chance in Riley's bookstore in New York when both were looking for the latest importations from London. They formed a lasting friendship which lasted all of Da Ponte's remaining life. He taught Italian to Moore's children and was a regular guest at his home, and Moore eventually established a chair of Italian literature at Columbia with Da Ponte at his head. Together, they were the prime movers in founding the first Italian opera company in New York City. And during the composition of Moore's famous Christmas poem, The Night Before Christmas, it was Da Ponte who guided Moore with the poem's structure and form and corrected and refined its pentameter. Now, the great wave of Italian immigration to America began around the turn of the century and lasted until after World War I. Unlike their Irish and English counterparts, they did not have the advantage of the language. It was only natural then that these Italian immigrants clung more closely to their native customs and traditions in which they felt a security in a strange and often bewildering land. But their children were quick to adapt to American ways, and in a matter of Christmas, the Befana disappeared from the scene and was replaced by the American Santa Claus. What remained intact, however, was the religious significance of the holiday and the custom of the family reunion, and of course the food and special Christmas delicacies. I remember in my own home, we used to have a meal on Christmas Eve which had to end at least by no later than 11 o'clock because we must fast an hour before receiving communion at midnight mass. There were 13 dishes, one for each of the apostles and for Christ himself. And they included things like this: spaghettini with a fish sauce, either calamari or tuna, boiled broccoli garnished with olive oil. Some people use cardoons in a batter, roasted zucchini with cornmeal, codfish stew in a light tomato sauce with raisins, fried cauliflower, fritters with codfish and cauliflower centers, pizza stuffed with rape or bitter broccoli, a mixed grill of fish such as smelts, sardines, and capiton, boiled and roasted chestnuts, struffoli, farfaletti, sfingi, fresh fennel in a bagna cauda, celery also, and fresh fruits and nuts, dried figs and dates, pears, grapes, oranges, tangerines, almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, and if you can get them, Sicilian fresh figs, which everybody knows are the largest and juiciest in all the world. And we have here a display of some of the delicacies without the fruit and vegetables, which I was not able to obtain, that the Italians partake of during their Christmas festivities. We see the various types of macaroni, such as, in this case here, spaghettini with a together with an egg noodle made with a spinach base, the dried figs, the chestnuts, the almond bar, the biscotti, which could be dunked into wine or into coffee as you please, the various nuts, the can of salted anchovies, which some people use on a pizza or as a sauce with olive oil and garlic, salt and pepper and parsley over spaghettini. And the panettone, which Italians in Italy exchange as Christmas gift. It's a large raised cake filled with dried fruits and raisins, and of course cherries in a liqueur. And of course, after Mass, when the fast was over, if you didn't have enough to eat and you couldn't wait until the next meal, there was always some sopressata in the refrigerator to satisfy anyone's appetite if you couldn't wait until the next meal was served. And then we had the torroni. You see the candies in these small little boxes. It's a nougat candy, which is wrapped in a wrapper which is similar to the communion wafer. It was first made during the Renaissance for a Christmas wedding of two noble families in Florence. And it was made by the chef in the shape of a large tower called a torrone. And to this day, it is traditional to give out these little boxes of torrone candy to the children and put them in our Christmas stockings. And then, of course, you have these magnificent pastries. Now, the finest pastry in all of Italy, it's a toss-up between Sicily and Naples. I'm inclined to believe that the Sicilian pastry has the edge because it's far richer. Neapolitans use more honey in their sweetening. Now, cane sugar was introduced to Italy by the Venetian traders back in the 11th century and was only available to the very rich. So the peasant classes use honey as their sweeteners. And here we have an assortment of cookies, all kinds of twists and ties and hard, soft, and semi-soft cookies which are baked long before the Christmas season and put away until Christmas Day. These we nibble on while we're playing lotto or something like that, or while kids are waiting to eat the next meal. There we see an example of this colorful Sicilian cart in the Venetian gondola. And here are the famous pastries. You see the pasticciotto, which is a small pie filled with either sweetened rice or sweetened cheese or a custard. There we have the fazzoletti in the shape of a handkerchief filled with a custard. The sfogliatelli filled with a sweetened cheese. Casatini, the three-colored cookies. Napoleons, which are puff pastries with an Italian sponge cake center and custard. A miniature cassata, you see the green, red, and white with the red cherry, and it's covered with an almond paste and filled with a sponge cake. Then they have the various fruit tarts stuffed with either blueberry or pineapple or whatever. And that little turnover, which is stuffed with a sweetened ricotta cheese. But most famous of all, the Sicilian cannoli, which is this right here. It is a deep-fried shell which is made and could be stored for weeks. And at the last moment, it is filled with a sweetened ricotta cheese to which has been added, at your pleasure, either chocolate chips, citron, candied fruit, or both. And, of course, after the big meal, should you have eaten too much, brioche to help you digest the meal. Now, Mrs. Gillespie and the Dunmore Chorus will favor us with some more Christmas carols from Italy. Christmas, La Vigilia, the Vigil. And if you will indulge me, I would like to make a personal recollection from my own boyhood. And I'm sure it parallels the boyhoods of many who are watching. It's still a magic time, even if you are no longer young, but still afflicted with sentimentality for remembering. And I remember. I think of all the people that have gone, except for what they left me in happy memories. My mother, my sister, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, especially that childless uncle of mine who had sort of adopted me as his own. He never drank liquor, except on holidays, and then only in his strong black coffee, and then got mortally sick on just 2 or 3. He was wonderful and generous and quick with a dime or a quarter, and on Christmas a small gold coin, and he admonished me with these words: non dice niente a nessuno. Don't tell anyone. The charity was secret, as all charities should be. And he slipped this to you surreptitiously. And in those Depression days, a dime was a loaf of bread, and a large loaf at that. And I knew what he was giving me out of what he needed for more important things. And what a day it was for the women. My father, poor as we were, somehow found the money to create a feast of the Nativity. The women were out early in the morning to buy the fish, the vegetables, and the fruit. All had to be fresh at its absolute best and in season. The baking was all behind them. It had been done days, even weeks before, and carefully hidden from the mischievous children who would have demolished the supply if they found a hiding place. The kitchen, which is the sanctuary in any Italian home, was a place of excitement on Christmas Eve. The skinning of that slippery caviton, which was still alive and thrashing about, and we children in our devilment, secretly hoping that the eel would slip out of their hands and go skittering across the kitchen floor. And the aroma in that kitchen, you could be nourished on the smells alone. At 6 o'clock, everyone would start arriving, and the noise was fantastic. The gathering was usually hosted by the aunt or uncle who had the largest dining room. But we all contributed to a part of that feast. They would gather to celebrate, to argue, and to exchange gifts that no one could really afford in those Depression days. Would I get an electric train, a sheepskin coat, high-cut shoes, a Daisy air rifle? I got an air rifle once, and I owned it until St. Stephen's Day. That's the day after Christmas, because my father returned it to Gnader's hardware store because I had accidentally punctured a neighbor's window pane in my excitement at owning such a treasure. Everyone was called to table at 8 o'clock, and the noise rose to a crescendo. The mother of the household would insist by custom upon serving everyone personally. And that anticipation, as she came through the dining room door with that first magnificent steaming plate. After all were served, she would then sit, and again by custom, she would be the first to taste the results of that long day's labor in the kitchen. And the food, I described it all to you. What to taste first? The elders were talking, gesticulating, singing, and so the children ate a little more and a little faster. And due to the unaccustomed late eating and the rich foods, I would celebrate with a rush to the bathroom, holding my head in my hands and surrendering in penance a part of my gluttony. Later, we all went to midnight mass, except for most of the women who would be attending the next morning's early service on Christmas Day. You see, they had to remain behind to prepare the snack of broiled sausage with fennel, the pastries, the muscatel wine, the fruits and the nuts, and the cherries in liquor, which would be consumed after Mass. And when we went outside, the air was sharp and electric and clear, and our gloveless hands were warmed by the hot chestnuts in our pockets, and we walked to church. We met our neighbors on the way and exchanged greetings. It was a magic time, admiring the Christmas trees alight in all the windows. Red, yellow, green, blue, and white lights and tinsel, and the smell of evergreen and tangerines. And if we were lucky, a gentle falling of chaste white snow. Christ was born. The time to renew your friendships, to reaffirm and reinforce your loves, and to forgive your enemies. Well, for 32 days anyway. And that's pretty good when you think about it. To forgive an enemy every 12 days. We just might improve society if that habit were more universal. And the great Mass, crowded as usual. All the lost sheep of the past year had come home. The smell of incense, the special music, usually by Pietro Jan and some Schubert. Being longer than usual, the children would start to fidget towards its end, and then we felt a pinch, usually administered by the disciplining uncle, who knew how to keep us in line with just one menacing look. Going home, the snow had increased, and so naturally we made skis of our shoes, and screaming and yelling, we slid down all the hills, all the while planning the next day's sledding. Or if you were too poor to own a flexible flyer, skiing on waxed barrel staves or lengths of bamboo, down the Linden Street Hill, and then back to the little breakfast of broiled sausage and other goodies which the elders would consume as they played tombola or lotto. The children would savagely tear open the wrappings of their Christmas presents and taunt the one who found the most coal in his Christmas stockings, for then everyone knew who had been the most incorrigible of the lot that year. Why do I recall all of this? I guess for me, time has stolen it all away, and I can't get over the loss. All those vital, strong people who made all the necessities of their lives, not just the material things, but the spiritual things as well. They were often worried in those troubled times, but they were never bored and never boring. Who needed all that new gimmickry that is now presented on the media as Christmas Eve? The day Santa lost his pack, or the three-legged reindeer, and all that other animated nonsense, which is replacing that wonderful interaction of the old and the young, which is the essential of the education and socialization of children. What lies behind all of my recollections? Is it the eating and the laughing, or the presents? I think not. I can scarcely remember the presents, but I do recall the people and what they meant to me. I miss them. I recall their natural gift for making a special day unforgettable just by being themselves. I recall that richness of the Italian spirit, contentious, hedonistic, and material at times, but so filled with the joy of life and the sense of how to make an adventure out of just being together. Buon Natale, buon Capodanno. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Now back to Mrs. Gillespie and the Dunmore Chorus. Thank you.
Adeste Fidelis is a Latin hymn whose origin is uncertain. However, it is known the world over and has been translated into many languages. We present now the inspirational Adeste Fidelis.